Greeting YouTube. Today I'm going to review two products from Small Niche Games. First up, these were given to me as review copies, so I want to be above board on that. The first product is the Chronicles of Amherth. The second is Aratin's Delve, and both of these are designed specifically for the Labyrinth Lord retro clone of an earlier edition of Dungeons and Dragons. As such, they are going to be most easily used for the Labyrinth Lord game itself, but they would also without much work be quite usable by any other version of D&D. You just have to use the text as description and add the mechanics of your choice to the product. Now, the Chronicles of Amherth is a 77-page campaign setting for the Labyrinth Lord game. As such, it presents you with what I would consider to be a very porous world, one that you could very easily use, particularly say if you're new to the Labyrinth Lord game, you've started a campaign with some friends, and your characters are like 3rd or 4th level. They're starting to feel a little hemmed in the section of the world that you've created, but you as a GM did not really consider the world at large. Well, you could very easily take that little section of the world you've created and drop it into anywhere appropriate in this campaign setting, and then adventure from that point. The first thing I liked about this product is I really enjoyed how they wrote up their gods. They really felt like Hellenistic deities. 2 parent gods, their 4 children, and then the grandchildren on the main pantheon, and then they allude to there being lesser holy beings of some different varieties. And it really felt, it had the right texture to me. It felt like it wasn't a re-imaging of the Hellenistic gods exactly, but they definitely nailed that feel of the internecine squabbling between the gods themselves and the machinations that involved with people who are related to each other and yet are still siblings and spouses. Yes, the gods are an incestuous lot. They often are. They also talk about the core races, which are right out of the Labyrinth Lord game. This is a human-centric campaign. They talk about the fact that while there are different deities, different nations worship the same deities under different guises. So like the High Father is going to be called by different names in different places, which is appropriate. It's also fairly realistic. In the real world, there were gods that were essentially worshipped by different nations, yet it was the same deity with a slight change. For example, Jupiter and Zeus for the Greeks and the Romans. It's a good example. There is a functional church here, which is based off of the Catholic model, the Catholic Church, the ordered structure that's trying to bring law to the world and what it sees as a fight against chaos. And it's kind of anti-magic, pro-human, so it's useful as a GM if you're looking for that kind of authoritarian structure to put into a game, both as either as a means to fight the chaos or as something that you consider to be too authoritative and it needs to be opposed. So it's a useful tool. Then we have the section of the product which is thumbnail sketches of all the different nations. Now these are deep enough that it's got major NPCs, locations, social conventions, things like that, so that a GM will have a good idea of what the nation is. And at the end of each passage, there is an inspiration, which is kind of the real-world nations that helped inspire their author to write this particular section, and a bunch of plot ideas. Like, for example, if you were in this country, these are things that might be useful as adventure hooks, which is always nice, and it gets you thinking about how to combine them and how to come up with your own rather fairly easily. Gives you an idea of what is the most appropriate type of adventure for that particular country. There is a nice bestiary in the back. I thought that was quite well done. Now, there was, for me, something that I thought was a little strange. One of the nations is a floating city. So basically, like a huge island that floats in the sky. It's got 2 different nations living in this. They're at war with each other, which is cool. Floating nations, floating islands are famous fantasy tropes. I've always enjoyed them. And there were like some dark mages fighting some dragon riding knights kind of thing floating in the sky. And the background for this, I should point out, is that this world is very old. It suffered a number of catastrophes, and there is the illusion that in the past there was a fusion of magic and technology, and now people are rediscovering these things through delving into dungeons and into lost worlds kind of things. It kind of had a Greyhawk feel to me. But when I first read about this floating kingdom, they talked about dragon riding knights, Dragonlance kind of inspired thing. That's what I'm thinking of. It didn't occur to me that they were actual dragons. I made the assumption that they were drakes or lesser dragons or something along those lines. But apparently, this particular nation takes actual dragons, and when the dragons are hatched, they lobotomize the dragons so that they are not fully sentient and turn regular everyday dragons, or if you can call a dragon regular and everyday, into domesticated livestock, essentially. Now, I have a problem with that as a person because a dragon is a sapient being. It's so self-aware. So essentially turning a self-aware being into a non-sentient self-aware being for the purposes of using it as a steed bothers me a little. But from a role-playing standpoint, I can't figure out how this nation survives. The only way I can figure is that dragons don't know that they're doing this. Because if dragons discovered that there was a group of humans lobotomizing hatchlings, every dragon on the planet would drop whatever they were doing, join forces regardless of alignment and past problems that dragons have had with each other, and wipe that nation off of the face of the planet, or in this case, out of the sky. So I think if I were to run this, I would have a lesser species of dragon, like a drake that wasn't sapient. Sort of, like using like monkeys as opposed to enslaving humans. It's a little ethically and morally clearer for me, but that's just the way I interpret it. Though I'd be interested to see how the politics of that fall for anyone else who uses this campaign. Now, they have a nice selection of magic items, which I liked. I found them inspirational. Even I don't use Labyrinth Lord. I could very easily use any of these things as inspiration to create my own magic items. Just reading them, I was kind of working out Pathfinder mechanics in my head as I was reading them. So it would not be difficult to use any of these as inspirations for other systems. So overall, it's a solid product. It will definitely help you get your campaign rolling. And thumbs up on the Chronicles of Amherth. The second is the Atarin's Delve, and it's a fairly simple one-level dungeon crawl for low-level characters. Takes place on the shore of an isolated lake in a kind of out-of-the-way community. It very much felt like a Lovecraftian New England setting. This is a very solid Lovecraftian inspired adventure. You've got decadent nobles that are involved that are cultists. You've got mysterious subterranean cavern system. You've got the illusion that there is something that used to live there and has risen from the past. So it definitely has this vibe, and there are enough NPCs in here to really whet your appetite and get you drawn into this particular area a little deeper. This could be used as a standalone adventure. This is designed to really fit into the Chronicles of Amherth setting, but you can very easily drop it into any area that has a lake and an isolated community. That's really all you need to do to get this adventure rolling. But of course, if you have it connected more intimately with your campaign, it's going to be a little better, because there are some allusions at the end of the adventure that could link you into the political structure of the area, both in the civilian, secular political structure and the sectarian religious political structure, which is nice. That gives you a little more depth and allows you to take it into different directions if you want to. I was quite impressed. The map is solid. The monsters they describe have a wonderful Lovecraftian feel. I really enjoyed them. I'm reading it and I'm like just kind of smiling. I got a kick out of it. So I recommend both of these products, particularly if you are a fan of the Labyrinth Lord version of D&D, but you could use this with both of these products with any version, so long as you're willing to bring the mechanics to fit the description text that they provide you.